fires at prospective accommodation centres, it's concerning that there seems to be an epidemic. I mean, over 20 fires in recent times.
Mm-hmm. It's very concerning and it should be absolutely condemned. I think the reality now is that every empty building, people seem to have this notion it's going to be used. But when it comes to migration, Pat, I just want to preface the fact that we need inward migration. But what we also need is integration. And in order to integrate people, you can't place them and dump them in the back end of nowhere, which has been the case. If we're going to integrate our migrant population into jobs, we have to have jobs where they're going. So I think
but this kind of thing of arson, and it looks like most of the cases are arson. Deliberately setting fire to buildings, some of which might be not in the best of nick anyway, but some of which would be almost ready for occupation. I mean, that's intolerable.
It is intolerable, and I don't know how you stop it, but I do think that part of the issue is that people are concerned about services, particularly in rural parts of Ireland. And I know a lot of the fires haven't been in rural parts of Ireland, but I would be very concerned that there's going to be lives lost. At the moment it's burning buildings, but if there are lives lost, it's very different. But at the end of the day, we still have to have a plan for migration. And I have people who do contact me from all parts of Wexford asking me or telling me that they've heard that this building is going to be used as an IPAS centre or as an accommodation for refugees. We ask our county council first, then we ask the department, and we go back and say, no, there are no plans for that building. It might be a pub being renovated. So there's a real difficulty that even where buildings are just being renovated and maybe under the Críochnaithe scheme, some of those, that people are misconceiving them to be accommodation.
Yeah. But whether you could be annoyed about this. You think, even though you wrongly think there's a migration centre being opened up near you, most normal people would not set fire to it.
No, I agree with you, absolutely. And nobody that I deal with, certainly.
I respect Verona as a public representative. I also am very cognizant that she represents people. But, what plan do people expect there should be from asylum seekers escaping war? Do we ask Vladimir Putin maybe to hold off on his offensives against Ukraine while we sort out a few restaurants and proper accommodation? There isn't accommodation in the cities.
Baggett Street Hospital's there, John.
I was coming back nearly a year and a half ago from Connemara with my two kids, and my wife went back separately, and we had to stop in Mam Cross. Now, one cannot imagine a more remote area in Ireland. There was no people living around it. We went into the hotel so the kids could use the toilet, and it was full of Ukrainian refugees. I don't imagine that they want to be there, and I don't imagine that anyone particularly has a concern about people in Mam Cross. But this has now become, maybe not with Verona, but certainly with Sinn Féin, we condemn arson, but you can't condemn arson, but we're a country where people got on boats to escape hunger, to go to Manhattan, to Lower Manhattan. There were no jobs, there was no accommodation, and they took us in. Let's not forget our history. Manhattan. And to say, we need resources, we need a plan. What does that mean? And the next line then is we need to communicate with locals. Communicate what? Like, unfortunately, they're coming into our jurisdiction because there is a housing crisis created by Fianna Fáil crashing the economy and Fine Gael having 10 years of austerity. There are no houses. There is nowhere else to put them. So those people, benighted as they are not coming here and leaving their homelands unless they have to. And if arson is occurring, if attacks on refugees are occurring, that is a policing problem. Again, comes back to the government.
Shane.
You're right, Pat. Most normal people wouldn't conceive going and burning down buildings, and it's sad then when we've got to the situation where we watched the news last night and the Gardaí locally in Kildare were appearing on television and saying that they appealed to people to say this wasn't going to be used as a centre. That's a sad state of affairs when the Gardaí themselves are actually trying to appeal to people to say, no, this isn't going to be, as if that was right to begin with. That's not right.
That is the rub, isn't it? That you reassure people this is not going to be an asylum centre, so therefore please don't set it on fire.
Honest to God, but this is the space.
Sorry state.
It is a sorry state, and if this is the space we're getting into, and rather than focusing on the kind of the negative connotations that everyone in this country holds those views. I don't believe they do. I believe they're inherently good. An example, yesterday, a group of Ukrainians who are based on the main street in Atboy in County Meath, I was contacted by local community leaders there. They brought them to the Dáil for a visit of the Dáil, over a dozen or so. I met with them. They were from primarily the Donbass region. Their homes, their families had been destroyed. But they came and they went with me. One of the first things that struck me was when they walked into the lobby of Dáil Éireann, the emotion when they saw their Ukrainian flag placed beside the tricolour underneath the portrait of Michael D. Higgins. They went, they listened to leaders' questions. They came to the Shannon where there was a debate in Ukraine, and we sat down afterwards. They talked to me. They were project managers, project engineers. One guy was a nuclear physicist. Another person was just a seamstress who was working at it by hoping to make a life for herself. That's the kind of leadership and engagement that we need at a local level, not stoking the fear and hate. And by the way, that was led by community leaders in that boy.
Yeah, but don't forget that Ukrainians have a ready and legal access under the EU provisions to be here. I'm just wondering, is there a racist thing underneath this, that people who are coming from Africa, for instance, or even further afield, that and they're normally looking for international protection, they're not Ukrainians. And by the way, you mentioned Baggot Street Hospital. That's an old one at this stage, because that would only take care of 1 week's worth of Ukrainians.
I don't disagree, but my point is, when John says we went to Manhattan on boats, we did, which was where the populace was, which is where the jobs were. We have a holiday village in the far end of South County, Wexford, Hookles. It is housing 300 very welcomed...
But there's nowhere else for them to go,
Sorry,
Verona.
John, just one
For the government,
But John, my point is...
frequently
John,
support.
you're missing... I haven't said that they shouldn't be there. What I am saying is that they are not able to integrate.
Not in my backyard.
We're not. No, I'm not, John. You won't even let me finish now, please. What I'm saying is, if we don't have integration, we're doing a disservice to everybody, including both asylum seekers and refugees. They can't even get a cup of coffee. The children are going to school on a bus. They come back and they can't go anywhere else because they're 20 miles from anywhere. This is long term. They've been there for 2 years, so it's not like they can't get jobs because there are no jobs. Because they've taken up the holiday village, we have a situation where the local economy is suffering from a tourism perspective. Small cafes not able to survive. We have got to plan. I said, John, we need migration, but we need integration. And what we need for that is accommodation in the populace, where the services are, where the jobs are, and where the transport system exists to allow them to integrate and live with Irish people.
Yeah, but the problem is that there are Irish people who are working in decent jobs, who are couch surfing in the capital. If you want to bring everyone to the capital, there's simply, literally, there is no accommodation available.
But why leave them and dump them in the country, Pat, where there's nothing available?
At least they'll have a bed for the night.
Well, look, I have a chap sleeping in a Jeep in Rosslare who's working in the port, and he is sleeping in his Jeep because he can't get accommodation.
John,
it's primarily an accommodation problem.
The question of the number of fires, and we were talking about it briefly in the programme, that it can be difficult to set a fire that will destroy a building. So do you believe there are people at work, there's a kind of a network of arsonists, or do you believe it's local communities responding to that kind of provocation?
Well, usually I go to my sources in the Gardaí, and they don't seem to know. So my detective skills don't go that far. But I would say that we had last May, our newspaper, the Mail on Sunday, reported on a number of people in County Clare blocking the entrance of migrants into a facility down there on an open road. That is against the law. Displaying effigies, as was done outside Leinster House in September, of politicians, including Mary Lou MacDonald. This was cross-party, being hung on gallows, and what they were chanting was against the law. And then we had riots in Dublin City. The Gardaí, because they're under-resourced, and GSOC conceded that yesterday. A committee, in a major departure, Drew Harris, before Christmas, said they were under-resourced, have failed in their ability to police this anti-migrant sentiment. And people who are setting arson, setting fires, should be aware there's a life sentence for that.
All right. Shane?
On the issue of the network of arsonists, and just looking at the front of the Examiner this morning, Pat, obviously the Gardaí have said that they don't believe that it is an organised system, but speaking to my colleague, Deputy James Lawless, who's chair of the Justice Committee, and obviously that was prominent this week in terms of leak slip, what is evident is that there are people penetrating the community Facebook pages and stoking that action. So it can be done remotely and actually stoking that sense of agitation right across the country. Just on a side, on the policing issue, I know James is bringing both the Garda Commissioner and the Minister for Justice before the Justice Committee to discuss these spate of attacks, both on their reaction to it and what's going to be done in terms of the future as well.
Yeah, you can't protect every
No.
derelict or building that's being renovated throughout the country. Maybe they need more creative policing. In other words, deliberately felon set up a place that you know and invite them to set it on fire and catch them in the act. I don't know.